Your Excellency, welcome to Sputnik Africa. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. It is a great honor for our agency.
Thank you.
Your Excellency, your visit is taking place as part of the celebrations for the 80th anniversary of Russia's victory in the Great Patriotic War. Yesterday, you attended the parade on Red Square. What are your impressions of this experience? In your opinion, how significant were the celebrations? Perhaps which equipment impressed you the most?
All right, thank you very much. As you mentioned, the context is indeed the celebration of Russia's victory in the Great Patriotic War, as it is called. We were very impressed by the parade because it began with the entire motorized section featuring vehicles, the legendary T-34 tank that contributed to the victory all the way up to today's modern vehicles, the T-90s, and of course, other types of missiles that have been developed. It made a big impression on us, taught us many lessons, and allowed us to see how Russia has evolved technologically in the military field from that great war up to today.
All right. Mr. President, why was it important for you to accept President Putin's invitation and join Russia in these celebrations?
It's important to me for several reasons. First of all, because it's an invitation from a friendly country. Russia and Burkina Faso are now working closely together. Our cooperation is quite strategic, which means we must come and take part alongside the Russian people. Secondly, in that same war, our ancestors also contributed to the liberation of Europe, to the fight against Nazism, which means we share a common history in celebrating this victory. That is very important. And another thing is that today, Russia and Burkina Faso are fighting the same battle. We are living in a world that I would describe as unilateral. We want a multipolar world. We want a world that is free, independent, a world of peace, where nations do not dictate to other nations what they should do and how they should be. So Russia is actively engaged in this struggle, which is also a fight for denazification, if I may say so. And so we too are engaged in the same kind of struggle against imperialism, which seeks to enslave us, which wants to keep us in bondage. So we therefore share the same perspectives. So it was very symbolic for us to come and take part alongside the Russian people in this celebration.
In particular, the Soviet people made a major contribution to defeating Nazism. And the people of Burkina Faso, as you rightly said, are now making efforts to fight and eradicate terrorism. Do you see any similarities between our two peoples? And how do these similarities manifest themselves more concretely?
Yes. I have learned many lessons from this celebration, and there are many similarities in the struggle we are currently waging. Look at the Soviet people who sacrificed nearly 27 million lives to achieve this victory. At one point, they could have said, that's enough, signed an armistice and given up. But it was their courage, tenacity, and resilience that made them continue the fight. And in the end, they won. Burkina Faso has been fighting against terrorism for 10 years. Now, it's not that there haven't been any deaths. There have been many deaths from that time up to today. But we do not give up because we know that we will achieve victory and we continue this fight. So there is this mindset that unites us. And that's also what is very interesting in these moments.
And how do you analyze the influence of the Soviet victory in the Second World War on the process of decolonization in Africa? What would have happened if we can try to imagine to Africa if Nazism had won?
It contributed a lot, I can say. Now, if Nazism had won, I can't even imagine. But I imagine, people did not respect Black people. Even today it continues. Black people have always been labeled as subhuman. Some actually saw us as animals. You've heard the stories of colonization, of slavery. Black people were tortured, displayed in cages like wild animals in Europe and so on. Black people were castrated to prevent them from even having offspring. Black people were treated as less than animals. You know that. In Congo, cardboard was considered more valuable than black skin. They preferred to dry rubber on Black people's skin rather than pay for cardboard to dry the rubber. Black people have suffered a lot. So slavery for centuries and centuries, colonization. This war, you see, they came and took our ancestors without their consent. They sent them to the slaughter on the front lines. And when they returned, you heard what happened in Senegal. When they tried to claim their money, they were killed. That is to say, they do not consider black people. And yet they went to fight alongside so-called allies who treated them like that. But imagine if Nazism had won. It would have been a disaster. So that's why I say it was a fight that had to be fought. It was utter madness in the world. It was a fight that had to be fought, and Africa took part. And today we can say thank you, because the people who made the greatest sacrifice were the Soviet people. No one lost as many people. No one experienced as much destruction during the war as the Soviet people. So we are grateful, and I think it was necessary for the world to be as it is today, and for Africa to be able to hope to carry on as well.
Thank you very much for your answer. Mr. President, you recently declared that Burkina Faso will be the graveyard of terrorism. Are you setting concrete deadlines to completely defeat it? And how do you see Russia's future assistance regarding this? One of the main pillars of the Russia-Burkina Faso partnership.
I said that because in Burkina Faso, we are working on the fact that today there are many criminals being recruited to come and fight in Burkina Faso. This is not terrorism. I don't even know how to describe it. It's criminality. These are bandits who have been armed by the imperialists to destabilize us, to keep us in a state of perpetual war, and to exploit us. And so, as I said, we are working to make Burkina Faso the graveyard of terrorism. When someone is recruited to come and fight in Burkina, it should be so that they would rather commit suicide. And that will happen because they equip them, they train them, and they give them technology, these criminals. But we are constantly adapting. Right now, we are in a rather unique phase. They have acquired new technologies, new combat techniques, and so on, thanks to the support of these imperialists. Now that we have studied the situation, and we are going to respond immediately to all of this. So you will see, terrorism will come to an end. I don't want to set a deadline, but terrorism will end, and very soon, as quickly as we possibly can. And from Russia, all we are really asking for is mainly intellectual support. Help with intellectual training for our military industry, which we need to develop, and help to train young people in everything we can develop to confront this war. This is the part that interests us the most.
And more specifically, what materials or perhaps what equipment interests you the most?
First of all, I want to say thank you. Because Russia is one of the few countries in the world that has provided us with military equipment to help us fight this war. So that is significant. Apart from Russia and China, there is no one else. Otherwise, it's even worse elsewhere. There, we want to pay, but they refuse to sell to us. But now, they have understood that we are at war. Russia is also conducting its special operation. We know it's not easy, but if, despite that, they were able to provide equipment and come to give it to Burkina Faso, I think that's already very important. But as I said, Russia is also helping to train us. For everything we purchase, Russian soldiers train Burkinabe soldiers on how to use this equipment and all that. But we want to continue developing our own military industry, Kumpu, with the support of Russia, or Rosato, which I would say is far ahead of the world, when it comes to weaponry. So we need to have this close collaboration, so that we can make progress in our war.
Thank you very much. In recent years, there have been major changes for the Sahel and for each of the AES countries in particular, such as, for example, the definitive break with ECOWAS, and also the adoption of their own symbols, like the common flag. In this context, how would you describe Burkina Faso before and after? And how do you assess the Alliance of Sahel States as a format for regional cooperation? Are there any plans for expansion, perhaps?
Yes. To understand the AES today, you just have to look at the African youth. I think that African youth are hopeful that this is a model of unity. And for us, the leaders of the AES, it puts pressure on us, and we have to succeed. Because Africa now needs to unite. We were in an organization that was supposed to be one of solidarity, cooperation, mutual assistance, and all that. But you can't be in an organization where you call each other brothers, and then at some point they cut off the electricity so that patients die in hospitals. the economy comes to a halt and banks are closed, so you can't access anything. Transfers you need to buy basic necessities, medicine, and so on, these were blocked for some Sahelian peoples. They even formed an army to come and fight against Sahelian peoples. While terrorism has been raging for decades, they have been incapable of sending a single soldier to help fight. These are not brothers. We shouldn't fool ourselves. And it's not the people, it's the leaders. Otherwise, when you look at the people who, even in these ECOWAS countries and all, the people support and understand the momentum of the AES. So that reassures us and encourages us to organize ourselves, to be a model, so that in the future, it can expand. But in order to expand, we need to establish strong foundations. And that's exactly what we are doing right now. So that's more or less what led us to withdraw and to organize ourselves in order to relaunch.
Mr. President, for many people in Africa, you are more than just the president of a country. You are seen as the embodiment of a renewed Pan-Africanism. Why does Africa today, in particular, need, if I may say so, a new Thomas Sankara? How does it feel to take on all this responsibility at only 37 years old?
Age doesn't matter, but I can say it's a lot of pressure. It's pressure. You shouldn't let it turn into delusions of grandeur. It's pressure. For me, it's a message that the youth are sending me, and that puts even more pressure on me. If I used to manage to sleep 2 hours, now I've cut my sleep down to just 1 hour. And if you shouldn't sleep, you shouldn't sleep anymore. Because they must have seen something surely that we're doing. Something that, in their view, could help Africa get out of this situation. For us, it encourages us, it remotivates us to keep fighting. That's why I say it's pressure. It's a very heavy responsibility. And I can promise that all we can do is not to betray, to keep following our path of Pan-African struggle. We hope that it will inspire all African youth, and that the Pan-Africanism we long for so much can become a reality. Because Africa has suffered a lot. It's time for us to unite, to work together, to develop ourselves. Just as Africans go elsewhere to see the world, to see money and everything else there is. In Africa, it's possible. It is possible. So this is our mission, and we are going to take it on.
Mr. President, more and more African countries are asserting their sovereignty and demanding the withdrawal of Western troops from their soil. Recently, for example, Chad, Senegal, and Côte d'Ivoire have made similar requests. In your opinion, where did the West go wrong in its relations with the African continent?
Well, what I know is our own situation. We were at war. We lived with Western troops and all that. We saw, and we decided to part ways with those troops because it doesn't fit with our struggle. On the contrary, it actually amplifies the problem. As for the other countries that have separated, I can't speak for them because they made their own decisions to separate. But then President Macron said that he was the one who told them to find a solution and all that. I can't get into that debate. Only they know the truth. But one thing is certain. You can't talk about sovereignty while having another country's army on your soil telling you what to do. The economy, education, the entire development of a country is based on the military. So every country should develop its own army, to be sovereign and independent. And that's exactly what we are doing. When I look at the case of Burkina, these foreign armies were present, and that contributed to weakening the Burkinabe army. They stopped recruiting. They are the ones who say what volume to recruit. There was more weaponry, equipment and everything. Even back in 1988 under Sankara, we were better equipped
than we were 10 or 20 years ago.
When terrorism arrived, we didn't have an army. We are still suffering from it today. It's in the midst of war that we are now building an army. So it's normal that it takes a bit of time. We are suffering, but we have to build an army. And when we come out of this war, we must come out stronger. That's what I'm saying. When I look at the statistics of the Soviet army, the number of men they lost, but when they came out of the war, they emerged much stronger. And today, no army has the equipment that the Russian army has. So we too must learn from our war. To come out of the war, we have to be very strong. Sovereignty begins with the army. Once you have a strong army, all the other sectors can easily develop. That's what I can say. That's what led Burkina, in any case, to separate from those armies.
All right. Another topic that persists and is important is the Ukrainian issue. Russia declares itself ready to negotiate without preconditions, while Ukraine constantly imposes constraints. Moreover, Kyiv supports terrorists in the Sahel. In your opinion, who does not want peace for our two countries?
I think that even before now, there was the Turkish President Erdogan, who managed to create a framework for dialogue. And I believe that the two presidents met at that time. It was only the beginning of the operation. All of us hoped that it would lead somewhere, that the weapons would fall silent, and that everyone would return to good intentions. But it was the Westerners who came and told the Ukrainian president not to accept. We followed all that, and in the end, what did it lead to? Well, I think all of this falls under manipulation. I think they were manipulated. Otherwise, the Ukrainian and Russian peoples were, well, it was the Soviet Union. They are brothers. How is it that hatred and Russophobia could be cultivated within this population? The war did not start in 2022. It started in 2014. This is also a reality that many people perhaps don't know, or that people refuse to acknowledge. It was in 2014 that the war began. And today, people are surprised to see that others might be shifting the blame onto Russia and all that. When Russian-speaking civilians were being bombed in 2014, who was speaking out? There are images that still exist. People were locked inside houses and burned. There are images that are there, but action should have been taken all that time. They were manipulated. And today, the reality is plain to see. You see, all the aid that was given, it wasn't really aid. They were told to hand over their minerals. In reality, Ukraine no longer belongs to the Ukrainians. They were manipulated, and now they are the losers. All sectors will be managed by those who led them into this war. The hope was to weaken Russia, but Russia is coming out of this war even stronger. So I think they need to understand this and come back to their senses in order to negotiate and achieve peace. Because they have declared that they support the terrorists. You all followed that. And we can also see on the ground that they are indeed supporting the terrorists. This is not a good war. I think they are completely mistaken. They need to come back to their senses. In any case, they can support them, but we will fight them and we will win. So if they still haven't understood by now that this whole maneuver was meant to bring them down and seize their critical minerals, they can keep waging war. So that's what I can say about the situation. Every people must understand that they need to avoid being manipulated and getting into a very complicated situation. That's more or less what I can say.
Thank you very much for that answer. Mr. President, what do you think of the Sputnik news agency and its role in the African media landscape? What makes its content appealing to African audiences? And in your opinion, what is the main difference with mainstream media?
The press is very important. Communication, you know that it's through the press that people's minds are shaped. So you already play a very important role by bringing out a part of the truth about history and the present. You must continue in this direction to awaken people's awareness. Because you see, it's all this Western press and all that which have contributed to putting the African people's consciousness to sleep. It's their narrative that gets through and all that. And we've been able to realize that often they invent big lies just to divide people, to allow
their politicians
to operate and do whatever they want, to prepare the ground and everything. So you need to do the opposite of what they do. That is, contribute to awakening people's awareness, and you have an important role to play, especially in Africa itself, so that Africans understand their own history, wake up and stop believing the lies of these Western media outlets. And you see, when it doesn't suit them, when you tell them the truth, they shut down the media. But here, when a media outlet is shut down, it becomes a huge issue. And what's unfortunate is to see even Africans supporting this. Over there, they shut down media outlets whenever they want, whenever it doesn't please them. Or those same people don't say a word. But when we shut down media outlets, you see so-called intellectual Africans on TV panels. We don't know what they've taken, but it's dangerous. So you have a very important role to play, as do all the media, in awakening the consciousness of Africans. There you go. I said that we are We are here so that young people wake up. We're not here with the intention of looting or anything like that. We want to build Africa. And if young people aren't awakened, they'll be lulled to sleep. These Western media sing our praises, saying we're doing well, we're doing well. But no, that's not true. We want people to know when things aren't going well for us. That's it, and for others to take over when needed. But when they also lie and say things aren't going well, we'll prove the opposite. So keep communicating and raising awareness in Africa.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, following the statements made by the AFRICOM commander before the US Senate, your government responded firmly, denouncing unfounded accusations regarding Burkina Faso's sovereign choices. What do you say to those, especially in Washington, who continue to question the legitimacy of your current partnerships, particularly with Russia? And how do you intend to defend Burkina Faso's image on the international stage in the face of this kind of rhetoric?
In any case, we are free to establish relations with whomever we choose. That is what independence means. So on this matter, they can continue to think whatever they want. As for us, we will go wherever we want, as long as partnership can, in any case, be mutually beneficial for both parties. Regarding those remarks, as you mentioned, we protested through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That was one thing. But I don't know what happened with that general. There is still a problem. And I would perhaps like him to admit his mistake if he was sent, and to understand that this was not the right mission. If he was misled, he should say so publicly, or otherwise admit before the Senate that he was mistaken. Or also, if it was done with bad intentions, well, we will confront him as we should, because everything he said is a lie. And it's really shameful to see an adult lie, to see an adult, a general officer of a great army lie. This is very serious. First of all, he talked about Burkina's gold being used for what? For us, to protect ourselves and all that. First, it's Burkina's gold, it's not his gold. That's the first thing. What business is it of his? It's none of his business. It's Burkina's gold. It doesn't concern him. Second thing, he's lying. Because Burkina never had any gold reserves until we came. We were the ones who started setting aside gold in the treasury of Burkina Faso. Otherwise, there wasn't a single gram of gold reserves in Burkina. So that means he's a liar, again. And another thing, when he says that, we use it to protect ourselves and all that. We're free. If the people have decided that we should govern them, we have a duty to protect ourselves. So we are free. What business is it of his? And the part that hurt me the most, not because he's a general or because he's American or anything like that, but because he's black. And it really hurts to see a black man being used to fight against another black man. And this didn't start just now. It has to stop. You see, it's very dangerous. Even Libya, who destroyed Libya, once again, they used a black man. In movies back in the day, in America, black people always played the bad guy. We told ourselves, it's just in the movies. But why do black people have to keep playing the bad guy? And I think that if he heard this interview, he should look at himself in the mirror, feel ashamed, come out and say, well, I was given a false report. I regret it. He needs to say it publicly. If it was a false report, then it was made, because it's possible. It's possible that he was given a false report, that he should come out with it, because as you saw, when I take another neighbor, again, as I say among us, Black, the Ivorian Minister of Defense, who goes around, travels to Turkey, meets the Turkish Minister of Defense, and tells him, you shouldn't sell us weapons. You see how much that hurts. When it's a black person who behaves like that, it really hurts. Did we make a false report? Let him come out and deny it. If he was sent to create a problem in Burkina, as they are used to doing, well, we'll get ready. We'll be waiting for them. Because this has to stop now. The black race should not be used to fight against black people. Every time it's the same thing. It's always the same. And that's what we deplore. And it really hurt us to see that it was a black person making these statements. It's true that they may regret it through various channels. They're trying to make up for it. Now that it was said publicly, it needs to be made right publicly. That's how it is for us. We're no longer engaging in diplomatic hypocrisy, as we like to say. Saying things loudly and clearly, and then coming back later to say, no, we're sorry, we didn't mean it. That's not enough. It needs to be said publicly. So I invite them to make amends, to say it publicly, because African youth have understood. Black youth around the world have understood. This kind of manipulation doesn't work anymore. That's how it's always been, using false pretexts in hopes of achieving other goals. That doesn't work anymore. So it's unfortunate, but Burkina Faso is staying true to its path. We will continue to develop. And he forgot to mention everything we are doing for Burkina Faso. What we are doing, no other regime has accomplished. That's it, the socio-economic development of Burkina Faso, who has done, look, we are building many health centers, equipping them with medical devices for examinations and lowering the costs of medical tests. Which regime has done the same? No one. We are taking action in agriculture, plowing farmers' fields for free. Our production is increasing and everything. Who has done that? No one. The army. We are creating a new army. And the Burkinabe army has never been as well and staffed and equipped as it is now. Who has done that? No regime. When it comes to employment, no regime has created as many jobs as we have. Industrialization. Maybe that's what bothers them. That's what they want to stop. So they have to make up lies. In any case, I invite them to rethink their approach. That's what I can say. It's a big lie, and it's unfortunate.